Hi Gina.
Hi Ione, hi everyone. I'm Gina, the senior editor of Polyester.
And I'm Ione, the founding editor-in-chief of Polyester, and this is the Polyester Podcast, a feminist pop culture podcast dissecting the discourse on a weekly basis.
Please make sure to like, rate, subscribe and review. And if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe to our membership platform for exclusive podcast-centered perks. We're offering exclusive video episodes, secret mini episodes, and even episodes centered on what you want us to talk about across different tier options. Go check it out at the link in our description. Do we have any reviews, Ione?
We do. This is by Eden Faith 94. Thank God for Polyester. This podcast has gotten me through the joy and strife of maternity leave. Grateful for your weekly feminist takes.
Thank you.
Very lovely. And then on Spotify, we have about last week's episode on AI boyfriends and girlfriends. Maya, the papaya on fire.
Lovely.
Says, love this episode. Be right back asking my 14-year-old sister if she chats to the AI bots. Not gonna lie, I use ChatGPT to recommend me podcasts that are similar to yours. Sorry, but also not. Are in-app purchases to treat your characters like buying them a new outfit skin. Essentially the same as treating your AI girlfriend to a manicure, ?
Yes.
I think they are a bit, but also you get to see an outfit or a skin.
You got to see your AI boyfriend.
Only if you pay more.
Well, I think the people who are paying for a manicure for your AI girlfriend is probably paying to look at them as well.
Well, that's a lot of assumptions.
Well, you know.
And to assume is to make an ass out of me and you.
Right, then.
And then Gaelish says, all I could think of when you read those stats at the beginning was ugh, ooh, ugh, or akvi. Akavi. As we say in Wales, Gina. She was trying to set me up with that. So, what are we talking about today, Gina?
We're talking about how we're all doomed and everything. The world's going to end very soon. Or at least there will be a civil war in America.
I don't think so.
I really, really believe it in my heart now.
Well, I don't think that's what we're talking about, though. So, that's not the topic in and of itself. What are we talking about?
About Jimmy Kimmel getting cancelled and then getting returned.
Returned to the
getting taken and then returned. Well, Holly Bennett said that about the film Taken once, where she went, it's boring, he gets taken and then she gets returned. That's what's happened with Jimmy Kimmel. He got taken away and then he got returned, and he's positioned himself as the martyr for the left.
Fucking hell. That's a really big thing to say that he has done.
Well, I think reading his speeches, like his because all late night shows in America, they begin with the monologue where they like explain like the current events and kind of like give like a take on it.
I didn't realise this was so long though. This one was half an hour. Was it especially long?
Yeah, normally they're like 10 minutes, 5 minutes.
10 minutes is still quite a long time to listen to someone monologue.
The start of the Graham Norton show kind of begins with that.
Can't say I've ever watched the start of the Graham Norton show.
I kind of know loads about it because of Hacks, because that's kind of like what the most recent season was about, like
I haven't seen
the
most
show.
Recent of Hacks.
But yeah,
didn't even know she gets a talk show.
Late night TV shows.
Thanks for the spoiler.
Begin with like a 10-minute monologue where they like interrogate the news of the day, basically. So they'll be like, there was the Suez Canal blockage, here's a joke about it. There was
why do you love the Suez Canal? You always talk about the Suez Canal.
It's crazy what happened over there. And then they're like, that plane went missing, here's a joke about it.
Oh.
And now
we have Charlie Kirk dies
and Jimmy Kimmel makes a joke about it.
Right, the thing is it wasn't even a direct joke about it.
Do you want to read out the joke?
He said, we hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterise this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
And then he goes on to say some crap about Trump.
That's not a joke about him dying though, is it?
No, but it's off the back of it, I guess is what the issue was. And then the show got pulled, not by ABC directly, but by
Disney.
Bob Iger. Who were pressured by the companies that own the stations in America. They run it a bit different to the UK.
They actually don't. I think it's the same.
Oh, okay, fine.
Because I watched that Jilly Cooper show, Rivals,
yes,
that has David Tennant in it. And this is all about that.
Oh,
it's
really?
about like a network news, like a TV network trying to win the bid for for the Cotswolds. So it's basically like you have the TV producers and then they like feed out all their programs to local people that broadcast them. So like, you know how you watch ITV Wales when you're watching the news? It's like they're all separate things that make choices whether to air or to not air TV shows, which is why like maybe something different will play in Liverpool that's playing in Brighton or in London or whatever.
Right, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the same works for America. So it's like for every state, there's probably even like multiple smaller organizations that get fed through like ABC programming or like whatever other ones programming, and they ultimately like have the decision whether to air or not air something.
And it's really, really rare for them to be like, we're pulling this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Disney was bowing to the pressure of those companies.
And the reason that they were so basically it just means that there's loads of pressure points within the network or like within the TV industry in which like Trump, or you can have political pressures points basically, because then if someone's going to like, you know, the local news in Arizona, Phoenix, and going, I'm going to pull your like federal funding if you air this, or if you speak badly about this, or if you make a joke about this, then they're obviously going to go, well, we don't want our funding pulled, we'll stop.
And it's not just federal funding. From the research, a lot of it talked about how like federal agencies have to sign off on like if companies can buy other companies, because then otherwise there'll be a monopoly on like who owns all these networks or owns all these stations. And so they have to also appease them, which is also still part of the federal government, which is also still Trump. So like the bigger guys are like, we don't want Jimmy Kimmel on the air anymore because it might piss off Trump, and then they'll be like, well, you guys can't do your massive merger that'll make you $6 billion.
Yeah. Which is also interesting because I thought, because there's definitely still rules in like book publishing, for example, about people owning like the majority of publishing houses. Because I remember like like a couple of years ago, Hachette tried to buy another book publishing conglomerate in America and got barred because you can't have like majority control over an entire industry, which apparently was true for TV until Bill Clinton brought in laws that loosened it basically, which has led to the point that we're seeing now in which like all of TV and like all of the networks are owned by like a minority of billionaires, like, you know, the same person that like I didn't even know that ABC was owned by Disney until this. And then like all of these, you know, they're all owned by like 3 things, even though there's 200 different networks and like subdivisions, and they all have streaming services.
And they all have crazy names.
Like what?
Well, there's been like that big thing with HBO and then renaming it
HBO
like,
Max, and then
it's just Max, and then it was HBO Max again, and then HBO Legacy.
Anyway,
but that's how they trick you.
Yeah, the illusion of choice.
Yeah, the illusion of choice, when really like it's all owned by one master company, the same way that like Lynx and Dove are both owned by one company.
And they're all cowering to Trump.
Yeah, and they're all using different just advertising strategies to seem like woke or not woke, but really when it comes down to the wire, these people who represent them on the TV shows are only allowed a certain amount of free speech.
So what are we saying, Gina? Are we saying that the American media is being controlled?
I am saying the American media has been being controlled, and I think Trump's the only one who's like been doing it in our faces for like most obviously, because when I read that stat about it being Bill Clinton who like loosened these laws, I think we're like at like just the end game of late capitalism now.
In what sense?
In that like it's not something that like Trump has just brought in himself, it's just been like gradually
he's utilising the tools that everyone else has done.
Exactly. And when one political party controls the press, what happens next?
Dictatorship.
And you know who'd love to be a dictator?
Who?
Donald Trump.
I mean, I think this just proves again that like Trump is extremely thin-skinned. Like I remember I was watching the news last week just before this all happened, when so Trump did his state visit here to the UK while this was all kicking off, but like the night before he was due to be at Windsor Castle, someone projected up video clips of him with Epstein, and then they got Good Morning Britain got like Donald Trump's nephew on the phone. But like I think like a nephew 3 times removed that's like met him 4 times in his life. Anyway, the nephew was saying that Trump's become less thin-skinned to like less. He's developed a thick skin to these type of things. Like what would have bothered him during first term doesn't necessarily bother him during his second term. I think this just kind of proves that that's not true.
I don't know though, I think he has been bolstered by getting in again, getting the popular vote.
I think that's a bit by the by as to whether it offends him or not when someone's mean.
I think it's more that he's like, these are the things that I need to control, because so many people were like, when the Charlie Kirk thing happened, were like, he's done this to hide the Epstein shit. Like tinfoil hat.
Oh, you can't say that, Gina.
I'm
That's
not
just
saying
like pure conspiracy.
I did not say I
That's just
believe
like
that. I
absolute
said people were saying that.
Yeah, but and then you're saying, so that, no, that's crazy.
That is what I've said, and I stand by it.
What, you stand by that Donald Trump killed Charlie Kirk to cover up the Epstein list?
I don't think it's too far of a fantasy.
Oh, no.
I don't think it's too fantastical to believe at all.
Right, okay. What I will say here is that I think a lot of those types of theories are part of the reason why we're in trouble now.
Well, I think they're happy to have a martyr as well. Like when they did the big Charlie Kirk funeral, they were literally on stage being like...
Yeah, but I think there's a difference between like capitalising on something that's happened rather than actually orchestrating it. No, it's not funny. It's not a funny joke to me.
I don't think it's a joke.
Oh. Okay. What I'm saying is, I think there's an issue when there's like conspiracy theories like this, because it helps us like get further and further away from like seeing something rationally and as the truth, which in the research says is a core tenet of fascist politics, is like confusing the truth, like creating a new truth, basically. It also like links in with postmodernism and stuff. Like you believe the truth that like, you know, that there's multiple truths that can exist at one time, and that's not necessarily true. That just means something can be exploited.
Yeah.
And an audience can be exploited, and a general public can be exploited. And I feel like, obviously, we're given this, like, illusion of that, like, we're being hidden, like, some things are being hidden from us. For example, like, the idea that Donald Trump killed Charlie Kirk. Sorry, it could be anything else. So we are, like, sowing these seeds of, like, mistrust. But meanwhile, government is actually taking a hold of media and like punishing those that speak out anti, and it kind of is like a distraction from the real issue.
Well, yeah, and I think what is interesting in the research...
I can't even think about what you're going to come out with next.
Was that the right then get to use the tools of the left to like make their point. So like when Kimmel got took off the air, so many podcasts and so many like right-wing influencers then took to be like, oh, so people can have their jobs taken off them for the views that they believe. We're going to do that too.
What do you mean? I think you need to be a bit more clear.
So when Kimmel got took off the air, it obviously became like a massive podcast topic and like thing for political commentators to comment on.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were like, well, as we've seen in the past, a lot of people have been fired or let go for holding homophobic views or for holding racist views or for being pro-Trump. So why does it switch then to not applying when Jimmy Kimmel has been outwardly anti-Trump? They're using like the same dialogues against leftists, like they're picking up those things, and I think it adds to you saying like the seeds of mistrust, like they're picking up all the different tools in the arsenal and using them for their own good.
But I think even when you get that far away, like even when with that happening, if you go back and look at the initial monologue that caused the firing, it is so tepid.
Oh yeah, it's
like,
always the like most milquetoast thing that causes shit.
The things that like people were fired for, like racism or whatever, like racism, homophobia, like actual hate speech against people. It's like, sure, if Jimmy Kimmel was standing up there like laughing that Charlie Kirk got shot, okay, cool, that could maybe be considered hate speech. But this is not. Like this is, and it's also interesting because he's specifically leveraging those ideas of like political factions to be like, the right were trying to say it wasn't them.
Well, exactly.
Like it's very confusing.
Well, that's what they're trying to make you though, isn't it? Confused.
No, I think they're being opportunistic.
It's both.
Yeah.
They're blurring the lines between like what right and wrong is, and also using like our language to do that.
Let's have a break.
Well, we're back from the break, guys. How are you feeling, Ione?
Fine, how are you?
I'm feeling very stressed out.
Why?
Because it's not just the political side of it that's stressing me out, but the capitalism side of it that's stressing me out. The way that the way fuck off the way the businesses are going up against each other to win capitalism rather than do what is right. But then what I would say is, can you ever trust a business to do what is right?
What are you talking about? I think you need some examples here.
So in the research, it kind of talks about how, like, the way that we fight dictatorship is by unifying together.
Yeah.
And the issue is people think that businesses will do that to unify against one another, against the government. But there's this thing which is referenced in the research in Why Won't America's Business Leaders Stand Up to Donald Trump by John Cassidy for the New Yorker. And there's this thing called The Prisoner's Dilemma, which is like the best name ever. This name goes hard. And it explains that economic...
Do you want me to read it?
No, I'll read it. Sorry, I'm really ill. Economists often refer to such situations as a prisoner's dilemma, in which individuals, businesses, or countries could theoretically benefit from cooperating with one another, but also have or are presented with incentives to act selfishly and cut their own deals. Analysis of dilemma shows how self-interested behaviour can easily lead to a bad collective outcome, but also how difficult it is to sustain a concerted strategy that involves some costs. CEOs subjected to Trump's diktats aren't being locked up, not yet anyway, but they face a huge collective action problem.
And I think that's like quite an opaque thing that's hard to understand. But then just above there's an example. At the same time, though, business leaders are presumably well aware that Trump is undermining the laws and norms on which commerce is based. Another fact that may be playing into the current state of affairs is the inherent difficulty of sustaining collective action in an environment in which businesses have competing interests as well as common ones, and particularly when Trump is trying to pick off companies one by one. Sonnenfeld recalled that in March, when the president signed an executive order targeting the law firm Paul Weiss, which had ties to the Democratic Party, Paul Weiss's chairman, Brad Karp, hoped its competitors would rally around it, but instead some of them tried to poach its personnel and clients. Paul Weiss subsequently reached a controversial deal with the administration in which it pledged to provide free legal work to causes associated with Trump. So that's kind of like an example of, you know, like people undertaking a selfish act in order to stay alive. But also, this is like a really, really massive margin, like really, really massive tangent. But I feel like the prisoner's dilemma, a really easy way to wrap your head around it, is kind of like the diversity push of the last 10 years. So like we saw this whole thing of like people pushing for diversity, for feminism, for body positivity, and for like, you know, more acceptance. And we literally saw the prisoner's dilemma like work itself out in real time, in which like people that maybe started as like quite political, quite radical, that were organizing collectively within their own groups, become like corporate shills, like go on the cover of Vogue, go on all like get TV deals, go on magazine covers, become like the face of sanitized diversity because it was good for selfish for them, selfish and good, but let down the collective organizing. And I feel like it just really neatly summarizes basically the whole of individualism that we experience like in the West. It's like people just prioritizing individual gain over collective action that could actually change anything. And I think it's just like a feedback loop that we're going to be stuck in for ages, whether it applies to politics or whether it applies to the media or whether it applies to all of those things at once. And I think also when we first came into this episode, we were like, oh, it's a bit dry, the Kimmel stuff. Like, because also it seemed like it kind of self-corrected. Like, he went off, then he came back and he's done his like big comeback thing, whatever. But it's like, I guess the research has made me realise how deep it actually is.
Yeah, definitely. Like the rivers run deep. I think that was always the goal of capitalism though as well, wasn't it? Like we've really seen like the end of trickle down theory, because the point was that like, oh, the guy at the top holds the most money, but then he'll pay his workers a bit more, and then they'll pay their like subcontractors a bit more, and then it goes down to like the women and the wives who get to have like their own fucking money off that, like the smaller minorities. But really what we see is people hoarding wealth at the top and not continue to like progress anyone else. And I think that really like ties into that like individualism, where people are like, I want to benefit me and not like the community that I'm in. I don't want to benefit the people around me. And I think that that's such a symptom of the way that capitalism has shaped our mindsets. I think also what I found really interesting in the research was there was like a huge bit dedicated to like how fascism works, and it was like explaining like the core tenets of fascism, and then like reading through it, really like you just saw so many parallels on like what's happening today. Like there's a huge bit where it says that, where it's called Jimmy Kimmel suspended 10 signs American democracy is failing by Julian Vasquez Helig for cloaking inequality, and through that they reference this work that's called How Fascism Works by Jason Stanley, and it says that this historical record offers at least 10 clear warning signs. Each serves as a mirror that we can hold up to this moment in the United States. And some of them were like very, very obvious, like persecution of minorities and outsiders. And then it compared that to like the way that ICE is operating, isn't allowed to like just be racially profiling people. And then like smaller ones where it was like the subordination of women and control of the family, and it talks about like how Mussolini offered medals for women who had more children, Hitler banned women from most professions, and it just really reminded me of like trad wives and how it's like the right is really like gunning for like this control of women in a similar way, but in like a way that like makes women feel empowered within themselves, or like pretends that that's the case. And reading through those, like, these are the warning signs of fascism, and all of them, like, aligning so neatly with, like, what's happening in our culture just really, like, shook me to the core. Like, I think when we both finished the research, we were both just like, we're doomed then. We're fucked.
But then I also think it's interesting. So I think there are a lot of parallels, and Ezra Klein has done an article that's in the research. Trump is building the blue scare by the New York Times, which is basically that he's like trying to systematically dismantle the Democrats. And yeah, there's so many examples. Like there's an example in Hungary of basically a leader dismantling all of like the local news and then replacing it with all his mates that are like pro him. And I think it's like definitely really unhealthy in general, especially like when you look at local news and like how news, capital N, like current affairs is circulated. Like even in the UK, we're in such dire straits. Like everything is just like 5 clickbait articles that are circulated around all of them. And that's like purposeful. And then it also, this article kind of goes into how during the second Red Scare, screenwriters were targeted, and you kind of saw a move away from like political films towards like lighthearted, an embrace of fluff essentially, which I thought was really interesting. You know, how when the Materialists came out and everyone was like, the rom-com's back, and they did the same thing with Anyone But You, the Sydney Sweeney film. Even just like Sydney Sweeney's whole embrace of kind of like low culture in alignment with Republicans really reminded me of this. But then at the end of the article, Ezra Klein finishes it by saying, the mistake I made during the first and second term, being steeped in history, sometimes isn't such a great thing. You're always looking for parallels, you're looking for discontinuities and all the rest of it. But the thing is, when you actually go back to Weimar Germany, the thing that everybody sees most clearly among everybody is the idea that this is all new. We have no idea where this is going. In the historical imagination of today, I've been trying to disentangle myself a little bit from that. Trump has become his own kind of actor, which I think is to say that like there's a lot of precedents for it, but there's also no examples of what's happening right now, because I think there's like part of it where you pulled out the similarities between like how public radio was used in Nazi Germany to how social media is used now, and this is all true, but it's like we're kind of playing like just a completely different game with similar tools. And I think what I always find most depressing about talking about politics is that it's just a game to these people. Like it's a game to these like 15 men, like it's a game to Mark Zuckerberg, it's a game to Elon Musk. Like you see how quickly like someone like Elon jumps ship, pledges allegiance to someone else, and like in that sense it's a game to Jimmy Kimmel. Like he's had the fucking best week of his life, no offense. Like
that's what I thought.
Yeah, he's like said this very like tepid thing and become a hero, and like in his monologue he tears up like 3 times being like, I wouldn't want to take the piss out of a boy that died. And it's like, where's your backbone?
He's running for president. 10 years. He's going to run for president.
How did he get famous? I swear I didn't know who he was until 2 years ago.
No, he's been like one of the late night stand-ins, because it's always been like the two Jimmys and they like hate each other.
I think I just always thought he was the same one.
That's funny.
Yeah. The only way I know the difference now is because one's in New York and one's in LA.
Well, I know the difference because they look completely different.
Yeah, but don't you just think Jimmy Fallon, like you could walk past him in the street and I wouldn't know who he was?
Not in America. The Americans would go to our bed.
I don't know though, like he's got such a no one face.
I know, but he'd be walking down the street like fucking John Wayne. Do you know what I mean? Like he's the shit.
Now, yeah, but I mean, like if you told me last week that I was in a room with Jimmy Kimmel and it was just like a Sainsbury's, I wouldn't have known.
Is Sainsbury's a room?
Yes, at its core, Sainsbury's is a room. All shops are a room.
That's crazy to think about.
It's true. I'm sorry, it is true.
We are definitely in a blue scare.
I think we're just scared.
With that.
Call it what you want. We're scared.
Well, there was a good bit where in that same article where they're talking about McCarthyism and they're like, people were deported in the first Red Scare. Like, if you were just Russian, they were like, get out the country. Like, they just assumed you're a communist. And I remember watching Everybody Hates Chris, and there's like a really good episode where he's like looking at like there's loads of posters being like, is there any communists in your community? And he's like, fuck, I think my dad's a communist, like he's such like a penny pincher, like all these stupid like stereotyps. But in this it says they're not as many people being deported now if you compare it with the Red Scare, but what you did have then was 20% to 40% of the American workforce was subject to surveillance, investigations and firings for their beliefs and activities. It really made me think of the Charlie Kirk database that's been circulating.
I do think as well, like, I always just think, you know when something like this rolls around and people are like, free speech, the First Amendment, it's what makes us Americans and it's the most important thing we have. It's like, do you know what's been going on in your country? Like, ever since it was birthed. Because, like, you've pretend that America's, like, the land of the free, and, like, you've got so much strife.
Well, America started with a genocide, so I don't think there was any freedom in it, love. Land of the free and home of the brave. Land of the gimps and... home of the Nazis.
They're going to pull that up at your next immigration entry point.
I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, I don't bloody talk like that.
Okay. Well, thank you, Gina.
Thank you, Ione.
Thank you, Rob, for the excellent research and sound teching.
And thank you, Olivia, for the edit.
We will see you next week.
See you next
if
week.
we make it.
Yeah, if we don't all get nuked.
No, I don't think we need to worry about the world getting nuked rather than us two being taken out.
Oh no, we will be getting nuked. It's all in this.
Can we
it's
not?
all in this Slavoj Žižek book that I'm reading. We are getting nuked.
I can't talk to you about this anymore. I'll try and get Gina to take off the tinfoil hat for next week.
Never.
Bye.
I put the MIA tracksuit.
Bye.
Bye.